Hello, 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 my lovely, beloved seekers and finders. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Way of Truth number 30. Number 30. So, my name is Artem Boytsev. I'm a spiritual teacher. This is my website. You can check out my teachings there. And this is a broadcast where we speak about all matters of spirituality. I give guidance to my students. We talk about meditation practice, different aspects of the spiritual path. I highly participate everyone. Oh, sorry. I highly encourage everyone to participate live in this broadcast if you have a question. So I will post a link right now. Here's the link. So if you wish to participate in this broadcast, please follow this link. All you need is a browser, and you'll be brought up into the waiting room, and I will be able to bring you on stage and address your questions. If you don't wish to do this for whatever reason, you can post your questions to the comment section, to the chat section in YouTube, or to the comment section on Facebook, and I'll be able to address it from there. So I have a couple of announcements to make before I go into the broadcast. So first of all, Katya, my wife, and I, we are considering organizing a retreat in Europe this coming August. And I know that I have a lot of students from Europe, so it's a rare opportunity to spend some time together. As I oftentimes say, the physical presence is very, very different from anything else. It's actually strikingly different for most people. The difference between text communication or video communication and physical presence, it's very, very different. So we do beautiful retreats in the United States. I will actually post a link right now to the Facebook post. Here it is, with the pictures and testimonials from our past retreats. There are pictures there. There's a beautiful video there, the full photo album. So we do intensive integration retreats, shadow work, energy work, emotional work, and it's a very moving experience for everyone involved. So we do this in the United States. We did it 3 times. Every 3 or 4 months we do this. The next retreat in the United States is actually also going to happen in September, most likely September 27th, 30th, or the week after that. The one in Europe, we were planning end of August, maybe the beginning of September, but we're not sure yet if we will have enough participants to justify the expense, because I will have to fly to Europe. So if you are interested in this retreat, it's extremely important for you to contact Katya or myself. So you can do this through Discord, through Facebook, through any other channel. You can even send an email and secure your commitment. So if we have enough participants, then it's going to happen. If we're not going to have enough participants, then the next one is going to be at the end of September and beginning of October in the United States. Those are 3-day retreats, 3 nights. We do a lot of practices there, meditation, inquiry, Dharma talks, lots of practices, quite intense and wonderful gatherings. Okay, so we don't have any live guests now, but I do have a question from Shaz. But oh no, okay. Hi Artem. Hi. A question. I am self-realized and quite free of pain. Nice, good for you, but not as much as you. I know that there is more to go, but I can't locate it or find how to suffer it. What should I do? So yeah, that's a pretty common question. So for as long as you feel that there is something more. There is. So it's pretty much I can guarantee that for as long as you feel that there is something more, there is. I get this question all the time. The difficulty is that the deeper you go, the subtle things, the more time it takes for them to arise in meditation. So meditation, strictly speaking, becomes less and less efficient the deeper you move on the spiritual path. At some point of time, meditation and sleep becomes pretty much the same experience. And this is why some people in the past, the example I often give is Osho, who spent like 3 years in meditation, closer to the end of his life. So that's why some people in the past spend a lot of time in meditation. Generally speaking, some other teachers like Ramana would say that after self-realization, all the remaining samskaras just get uncovered over time. This is also a legitimate approach to take. So you can just live your life and let the events of it uncover the remaining suffering in you. So you can kind of become, you can make life your practice, and everything that happens in life, all of your interactions, all conflicts, all events that are still to happen, will uncover the rest of the clinging and conditioning and suffering. So, however, if you want to do deliberate practice, and you still kind of, you enjoy the process, and you know that there's more freedom to uncover, there's more bliss to uncover, there's more lightness and happiness and peace to experience, and you wish to experience it sooner, then you can still do deliberate practice. So I know 3 methods which I recommend. I don't know any other. If someone knows any other methods that can work when one is particularly deep, please let me know. So the first one is meditation, but a long meditation, right? As if you're in a rather deep state of abiding awareness, then the first 35, 60 minutes of meditation, nothing really uncomfortable comes up usually. So I recommend people do 2-hour meditations, let's say at least an hour and a half. So I actually recommend everyone who is awake to do at least an hour and a half meditation. Usually only at about like 45-minute mark, it becomes productive and more or less intense. So try 2-hour meditation, try 3-hour meditation. Meditation, strictly speaking, is just rest. So in the completely enlightened state, meditating, which is just resting the body, is just as simple and easy as doing something. So not doing something becomes as simple and easy as doing something. So I oftentimes say that enlightenment is not a vegetative state. The object of investigation is restlessness. So it's not like you have to do nothing. That's not what enlightenment is. The question is, why is it difficult to do nothing? Because for as long as it's difficult to do nothing, then there's something from the past that is still yearning to be resolved. So you can practice doing nothing for longer periods of time and see if any difficulty arises. The unfolding continues in dreams, in night dreams, in sleep, but you don't have a lot of control over that. So one method is longer meditation. Another is responsible use of psychedelics. So you can try combining meditation with psychedelics. It will make meditation more intense. If you are quite significantly painless, right? If you recently self-realized, then psychedelics will be very, very, very intense. So be careful. You can be very sensitive, very raw, very vulnerable. So start slowly. If you're very mature in awareness, then psychedelics will not be very intense. There probably won't be a lot of hallucinations, but still some energy, emotional work will take place. They go into intensify your meditation experience. And you will probably find that you will need stronger doses, and you can also, as you uncover and process deeper and deeper, more subtle levels of egoic suffering, you can also increase the dosage, because the same dose will be giving you less and less experience. So take attention to tolerance, of course, also. All psychedelics have tolerance, and all psychedelics have cross tolerance too, because it's all about the same. And then finally, a very important, frequently overlooked method is honest conversations with other realized beings. Preferably in-person conversations. So I can, for example, you can come to our retreat and see if anything comes up there. Have an inquiry session with me, a one-on-one session with me. Spend some time with me in person. Have some honest conversations in person. Also witness other people on my retreats. Work through their suffering. It may arise tears of compassion and deeper clarity, and if you can still relate to the suffering on one level or the other. So both very honest, sincere, intimate conversations and actually confrontational conversations can help arise deeper suffering. Like, for example, the spiritual people absolutely love to point flaws in each other and to assert the level of insight over each other, which is entirely natural because the ego is a shapeshifter, as Adyashanti said. So the worldly ego becomes spiritual ego, then enlightened ego, and so the and because every ego is fundamentally always competitive, then the spiritual ego and the enlightened egos are also competitive. So in those competitions, some anger or frustration can arise. Also very, very important to explore. So that's why I also say that if you're teaching, it's extremely important to keep also attention on yourself and view everything that arises in you in the process of teaching as grace. And if you are teaching, then this can also, if you have this attitude, then this can also be a very valuable practice, because you will get frustrated with your students. They will not understand you. They will treat you disrespectfully. They will insult you. Other spiritual teachers will insult you and treat you disrespectfully, because for as long as there's ego, there's always abuse and there's always ill will. It just becomes much more subtle. So generally speaking, the self-realization for most people takes care of violent tendencies. I mean, physical violence. So the physical violence is transcended at this point, which is why it is quite correct to call a self-realized person a saint. But the emotional violence and other forms of domination usually takes much longer to actually process. So I only know three methods: meditation, psychedelics, and working in person, spending time in the presence of other realized being, and especially those who are further along than you on the spiritual path. And of course, living life. Every person can give you grace. Every conflict that is in any way uncomfortable is an invitation to explore deeper suffering, and not only conflict with other people. I'm not like saying engaged in conflict with other people, but inner conflict. So when you don't know what to do, when things don't go your way, when events of your life happen and how they affect you. So that's what I recommend. Those are the only things that I know. If anyone knows of some other things, please let me know. So we're talking about a rather deep state of self-realization. Okay, I hope that addressed this question. Kinho says, hey Kinho. Okay, let's see. Inka, the names, the internet. Hello, Artem. Hi. Can you comment on why Osho frequently commented on Hitler and the Reich? Wow. I actually never heard Osho commenting on Hitler. Sometimes in a positive light. I think Germany before World War II has some connections to the spiritual journey. Thanks. Interesting question. I have never heard of Osho commenting on Hitler and Reich, especially in the positive light. If he was commenting in the positive light, he was probably provocative, or maybe he was describing some egoic dynamics, which you interpreted as the positive light. So please send me a link. I would like to take a look at that. I would be extraordinarily surprised if it was really in the positive light. So so all the social dynamics, strictly speaking, has something to do with the spiritual journey. The dynamics of our society mirror the dynamics of the ego on the collective scale. So you could even look at countries and societies as a person and see what's happening. So it's very, it is very. I'm not an expert on the world history. I know some. I understand the history of World War II quite well, because I'm also Russian, and it was a conflict mostly. Well, it was a world war, but most of the deaths, like 80% of the death, I think, happened on the East Front. So it was mostly a conflict between Soviet Union and Germany. Well, not Germany, but their allied forces. And I think there's something like 30 million people. They were not all Russians. The Ukrainians too. I think like 5 or 6 million of Ukrainians, something like that. Like 30 million people from the Soviet Union died in World War II. So we will study those things, and most Russians have interest in those things. Most don't study it deeply. But my understanding is, my understanding of history. So if you imagine a person, right? So Germany was humiliated after the World War I, right? So it lost. It was quite significantly curtailed. So it's a society which is in a kind of a very well, I wouldn't say desperate, but quite kind of, I don't know the word that I don't know the word in English that I want to use. I know it in Russian, like well, okay, let's stick with humiliated, right? So humiliated, dispirited, and then comes a leader who says that I will lead you to greatness. And not only I will lead you to greatness, I will also tell you that you're the best. You're absolutely the best nation. You deserve this world. I will lead you to greatness. And this greatness also will include revenge. It will include showing these others that humiliated us who's the boss and how great we are. So it's an extremely appealing narrative for the ego, right? So not only you reassert your greatness and arise from humiliation, always at the expense of another. Right, so the ego does things at the expense of another. So, but also you get to avenge, and you get to prove to everyone that you are the best. And so, I can see narratives of the ego reproducing, manifesting itself on the collective scale all the time, right? Even the conflicts between countries, or the conflicts between people are the same. I know better than you. I am better than you. I'm more moral than you. I'm more spiritual than you. And the interesting thing is, the ego always screams and talks about what it doesn't have. It's a very interesting paradox. Like if you're a loving person, you don't need to say it. If you're a compassionate person, you don't need to say, I'm so compassionate, I'm so loving. Almost everything that the ego says, it says because it doesn't have it. And so it wants to deceive others into thinking that it does. And so you can see it on the level of countries too, right? The countries that are mostly spiritually bereft, are also the countries that are mostly aggressively verbally spiritual and proud of their religiosity and their spirituality, right? So examples are like Russia, very proud people. They've got like mysterious Russian soul, things like that. But actually, Russia is a quite cruel society. Of course, you can see the same thing in religiosity of Middle Eastern countries, Islam, and things like that. And then the kindest society, the most humane society, are right now on the planet are quite. Maybe not entirely atheistic, but they're certainly not proud of their spirituality. It's not part of their ethos, of their culture. Nordic European countries, for example. And so, to some extent, this even applies to the United States when they scream about freedom. So yes, the United States is actually quite a free country when it comes to freedom of speech, for example, and some other freedoms. But when it comes to economic freedom, for example, the United States is not a free country at all. The United States is actually a country ruled by money. You cannot, in all seriousness, say that a country is free when their education system and the healthcare system in such a state, with such huge income inequality and things like that. So what the ego, and also, by the way, the United States it can be and have been in the past quite tyrannical country when it comes to other countries, and quite tyrannical within its imposition of the world economic order. I mean, the United States has done a lot of good in the world, but it also has done a lot of bad things in the world. So same with any other country, right? I'm not saying that Russia is a bad country. It also contributed a lot to the world, but it was also fundamentally an empire, and has suffered tremendously and continues to suffer from imperial thinking. So the culture of the country actually kind of reflects in some way and informs the individual culture of reflects in some ways the egoic tendencies, and the egoic tendencies of the population are also informed by culture. So the culture and the ego, they are in this loop, right? So they recreate each other. And so you can even observe this tendency of how societies manifest egoic tendencies and egoic suffering on the collective level in the process of awakening itself. You see, that's a very interesting observation also. You can say that humanity is undergoing collective awakening, but it's just very, very, very slowly. So what happens to a individual when it undergoes the awakening? First, always the mind awakens. Always first the awakening of the mind. First, the insight in the mind, right? So I have my own levels of dreaming or stages of enlightenment. Adi Shanti describes it as awakening of the mind, then awakening of the heart, and awakening of the God. That's actually a brilliant description because it is so humane. It is easier to relate to it than some more technical descriptions. Other teachers do technical description. I don't like this at all. My description is in the language of bondage and slavery, which is kind of very piercing, very scary. And so I put it this way: Adi Shanti's description is the most humane that I have come across. So they're all equivalent. They're all absolutely equivalent. So he's right. Actually, that's exactly how it happens. First, the mind has a realization. Then, awakening of the heart is the embodiment of it, and going through all the layers of suppressed emotions, all the layers of emotionality, which includes, of course, boundless compassion to others, generational trauma, That's when people see past lives and things like that. And the awakening of the God is the fear. And of course, the fear is present all along, but the awakening of the God is like the deepest letting go of fear and flowering of intuition and flow. And so something quite similar happens on the level of our humanity as a whole, right? You can say that the awakening of the mind was enlightenment. I'm not talking about spiritual enlightenment, I'm talking about the period of enlightenment. So basically, this is where humanity, after a long period of darkness, rediscovered reason, right? So, because enlightenment is also reason. You can say when the awakening of the mind happens, it feels like you're going crazy and out of mind and blah blah blah. But that's just because you're observing the existing egoic madness. A reason can actually help you, and it can be a tool. We use it in self-inquiry to analyze and cut through the egoic self-deceit. So the flowering of reason that happened in the period of enlightenment, the flowering of science, can be said to be the awakening of the mind of the society. So it led to uh, a triumph of reason over passions that took us out of the Middle Ages, basically. And right now there's like a little bit pulled back from that, which is also very normal, because as the person goes through deeper and deeper suffering, this in the spiritual process, the suffering feels intense, and the reason takes the backstage sometimes. But generally speaking, this awakening of reason, reawakening of reason, because we lost reason in the Middle Ages, right? The reason used to be in a much higher regard in ancient time, for example, where most of a culture originates, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. I think that Aristotle said law is reason devoid of passion, or something like this. This is actually a very, very good statement. So this reawakening of reason took us from the Dark Ages and made over the course of the few centuries not only technological progress, which is great, but also it made our society more humane, because reason applied diligently also leads to flowering of humanity, leads to more humane behavior, because the behaviors of passions, vengeance, other things, violence, they are not only they don't only stem from hatred, but they're also unreasonable. They are irrational in the very clear sense of the word. And so the science kind of paints the way in some way. So it challenges the preconceptions that are coming from passions. Like, for example, the science points also to some facts that are evident in enlightenment, like that the punishment doesn't work very well, rehabilitation works much better, or that the level of happiness in countries with lower income inequalities is higher, that it correlates. So if you study our society objectively, you will actually see quite a lot of interesting things there. And so now the society undergoes the awakening of the heart, but very, very slowly. So that's why the focus is on all of the focus of the recent decades, which is a good focus, has been on raising awareness, uncovering abuse, emotional abuse, the treatment of minorities, the treatment of gays, and things like that. And this is great, but of course, with that comes a lot of drama. So people accuse each other, they dehumanize each other. It's not like a coincidence that the word Nazi comes up in almost every conversation, racist, sexist, things like that. So something similar happens in all spiritual egos after the awakening. There's a lot of pain. So you're bad, you're wretched, I'm bad, I'm like, all of this is going on. So there's like there's not a lot of reason in ego fights, but most ego fights happen after the awakening, actually, not before. So we have something similar. So we have, as a society, we have not completely transcended, of course, far from it. But compared to like 2 or 3 centuries ago, we almost eradicated physical violence, just like it happens when a person awakens on the level of the mind. But the emotional violence is now the thing, right? So you can see it on the internet, you can see it everywhere. It's an extremely emotionally violent society. And so we're kind of at the beginning of this process of the awakening of the heart of the society. And so more and more cruel and callous behavior is being discussed and less tolerant of. And at the same time, there's more hysteria and mutual accusations and dehumanization, which is also very reminiscent. Is pretty much the same thing that happens in an individual that is kind of undergoing the spiritual awakening. So sorry for such a long interlude, but I think that it was a very interesting topic to discuss. I don't think that I ever discussed it in public, and how similar the processes of collective awakening are to the individual awakening. So with the very, very beginning of this process, and then if I'm right, then within a few decades, we will probably also see a huge growth of spiritual egos. So like people abusing each other and pointing flaws to each other in the spiritual language. So the language of spirituality is already like making its way in mainstream. People talk about acceptance like more and more, oh, I hate you because you're not accepting, and things like that. I'm very loving, you're not. All of this. So it would be very interesting to watch if we don't destroy ourselves as a species. And unfortunately, I don't have much time, like maybe probably like 40, 50 years, but it would be very interesting to watch how culture shifts as we lose our egos as collective humanity. And of course, we'll develop spiritual egos as collective humanity and the whole thing. So it's going to be a circus. So yes, it's connected, it's related. I don't know about specific Osho's comment about Nazi Germany though. So that's a different question. Okay. Another name that I cannot read says, "Hi, not necessarily enlightenment related, but how would you feel if whenever you'd walk into the room, your mom would talk to random people, guys, and hide her phone due to VCing, even though she has a partner, and you kind of go into the room every 30 minutes, or she never has time for you either?" Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're in this situation. I think that you're asking for advice. It's very difficult to give advice from such a message. I mean, of course it is. I sympathize with you. Of course it is. It is difficult when your parent does not give you any attention, and there is no time. You feel unloved. You feel abandoned, and also when you witness what you what you think, and I don't know if it's true, but what certainly looks like your mother having an affair, if not physical, then maybe emotional affair. I understand the difficulty of the situation. It's always difficult to be neglected. It's always difficult to see someone else's deceit. I cannot tell you what to do, obviously, because I don't know you, and it's just a question from an anonymous person on the forum. So all I can do is I sympathize with your situation, and from your own spiritual perspective, from the perspective of your own spiritual practice, the same advice applies, is to give deep, intimate attention to all the feelings and sensations that it creates in you. We become more and more accepting of truth, not by hiding from truth, but by accepting what's going on and accepting our reactions to what's going on. And with that, we start seeing truth clearer and clearer, and we become more loving towards ourselves, become more loving and compassionate towards other people. And we gain the ability to address situations from the place of truth and honesty and integrity, and not from the place of ill will. So that's a long process. And whether some conflicts with your family members are desirable in this process, or should happen or not, it really depends on where you are. It really depends on where it's coming from. So I certainly cannot give any specific advice in this situation without knowing you. But just feel everything that it creates in you. I'm really sorry to hear that, my friend, that you're having such a difficult time at home. Okay, Matthew says, it is difficult to embody realizations. Yes, it is. For instance, I know that no one is to blame for my suffering. I know my mom is not to blame. Yet at the same time, okay, do you continue? Hold on. Yet at the same time, I have realized that no one is to blame for the predicament we call life. Yet I have so much hate, much of it directed at my mom. How do I accept a deeply dreaming person who continues to hurt me? This is a wonderful question. Yes. Ultimately, no one is to blame. That's a very difficult thing to realize. But it is true, right? So even in my language, so I say that we are conditioned since the early childhood. My language is, I guess, like I would say, probably the most like down to earth and precise language about what's going on. But it's important not to interpret it as, okay, so we all get conditioned since early childhood, and I am this way because I was born into a hateful society and I was rejected love and stuff like that. So therefore, my parents are at fault for this. But if you actually consider what happened to them, you will have to admit that the same thing happened to them, right? So they are this way also because they were raised this way. And you can continue this cycle in the past, and you can speculate when did it all start, because we weren't like that when we were living naturally, just like animals do. Animals don't mistreat their children, only humans do. But so we can speculate where it started, but it was such a long time ago that your mother literally had absolutely no control about all the suffering and conditioning that she would acquire and how she would raise you. So from that perspective, it is still no one is to blame. So all you can do is forgive yourself for being born, forgive your parents for being the way they are, and it happens through accepting of the emotional experience. Now the mind, though, when hatred or anger or resentment happens, the mind always needs an arrow, because the mind thinks in dualistic terms. And from the mind perspective, there's always a story behind an offense or an accusation or ill will. So people fall into different categories on this one. So the ego is basically just this huge composition of dualities, and there are pluses and minuses on each side. That's why a truly deeply realized master and mature master is important, because they can look at what side you're falling on and kind of correct you a little bit, and rather than reinforce it. So the mind will either think that it's your fault, so some people become self-blaming and self-hating, or it's everyone else's fault, so they project the blame and hate outwards. Same thing, right? So there could be suicidal ideation, there could be homicidal ideation. Usually it's both. One is on the level of consciousness, another is deep below, right? So if in the dream state you tended to think that everything that happens to you is your fault, then once you awaken, you will have a lot of aggression towards others. If in the dream state you were narcissistic and aggressive towards others and thought that you're the best thing in the world and really was a very high opinion of yourself, then when you awaken, you will always see how deeply self-hateful you are and how it was all coming from insecurity, and there's going to be self-loathing and things like that. So you will experience both, and during those experiences there will always be a story about which person it is directed to. So don't try to change this story. There's no reason to change this story. uh, uh, just let the story come, let the story arise in the mind and fall, but accept the sensate experience of anger or resentment. It is difficult sometimes. Sometimes the mind just goes in loops and loops and loops. But take attention to how your body feels. When you do that, you will also slowly see that this story uh, uh, doesn't have as much validity to it as as you thought. It's not always the case. I mean, sometimes it's exactly what happened, and you kind of just processing it. But at at the very least, the view will change, right? So whereas like if before you thought that, like for example, your mother is just an evil person, and the mind says those things. So as you process it and your compassion towards yourself develop, your compassion towards your mother will also develop, and then you will get a deeper embodied appreciation that she is this way only because she was raised this way, just like you were. And so and so that's why there is no other, right? So when Romana says there is no other, he means there is no psychological other. All the egos exists in your mind, and the stories could take any direction, right? So it applies to everything. It applies to hatred, to loathing. It could be self-hatred, self-loathing, or loathing or hatred of the other, self-disgust, disgust of the other, uh, shame and guilt, all of this experience, compassion, compassion towards yourself, compassion towards the other, crying for your own life, crying for the lives of the others. So all of these experiences will have a narrative that is directed, and that's totally okay. That's totally fine. So the forgiveness of your mother happens with forgiveness of yourself, acceptance of yourself. So you cannot forgive your mother until you're still resentful towards yourself. So you need to forgive your resentment first. And forgiving your resentment and forgiving your hatred also means uh, allowing it and loving it and accepting it. So once you forgive yourself, the forgiveness of your mother will come naturally and effortlessly. So allow yourself this experience, investigate this experience, accept this experience, and the stories of the mind in the mind will change. Okay. iPhone is asking, we are alone in the universe, UFOs, aliens, what do you think about that? I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I mean, I think I think that it is extraordinarily unlikely that we are sorry, alone in the universe. Sorry. Uh, because the universe is so vast and just statistically it's extraordinarily unlikely, but it might be that the speed of light presents some sort of barrier, or there are some other barriers. It might be that it doesn't, and they kind of visit us. We're just so underdeveloped that from their perspective, I can only imagine what we can even bring enlightenment into this, right? And I can only imagine uh, how a society that lives in the natural state would look at us. because from the egoic perspective, the ego says, oh, this is just how humans are, but no, that's not how humans are. A healthy human is not like a human in our society at all. From the enlightenment perspective, this is a very sick society, and which is deeply struggling and perpetuating its struggle of the cycle of violence and abuse. And then you can only imagine how a society in the natural state that doesn't suffer from unnecessary violence and abuse would look at us. Uh, that's from this spiritual perspective, which is kind of silly. It's just a speculation. I don't know, right? So there are some other perspective, maybe like they're so technologically advanced that from their perspective they can only like look at us just like we look at ants, or maybe no one actually visits us. So I don't know. I heard about some recent evidence that wouldn't surprise me one way or the other. It would surprise me greatly if we're the only life in the universe. That would just surprise me to no end, because it just doesn't make any sense. And it's most likely an infinite universe. There are infinite number of other universes. All universes is endless play of life. So it would be very strange if like the only planet, the only Earth, and why would you need the infinity of the universe then? So Kinho asks, hi Artem, your observations vis-a-vis collective ego represented in a culture very insightful. Thank you. Would you say you were always an insightful person? Did that much come after astralization? No, I was not. No, it like most of the things that I'm telling you are the process of continued realization, the process of continued embodiment of love, the beauty of love, the emptiness of death, of love and death, and the intellectual processes that happened in your mind to embody the insight. So the mind continues to kind of chew on some things, and some things that are truly understood, the mind no longer thinks about it. So I no longer think about those things, but I still know them. So I came to know them during the process of my enlightenment. So the process, the path from self-realization to enlightenment. And with regard to my previous life, I was not insightful in this way. No. No mind in the dream state can be insightful in this way. But what I did have, and you can call it a blessing, is I had a very kind of strong repulsion to violence, but I was abused myself. So I was never violent, which helped. Even though, of course, after self-realization, I was shocked to find out how much violent fantasies I had. So I had a tremendous amount of homicidal ideation. I had tremendous amount of suicidal ideation. So, but at least I didn't do it in life, right? So I didn't like add to my karma by being violent to someone. And I always try to understand why the society is so fucked up. So I spent like half of my life before enlightenment in depression, and I was reading and I was trying to understand. This didn't make my life easier, right? So raising awareness always makes life harder. So you can talk about spirituality as kind of when you no longer look away from anything. You no longer pretend it's not there. So this applies both to your body, the sensations, but this applies also to what's happening in the world, right? I was not capable at that time to direct this process towards myself, right? So not ignoring what's there. Of course, I did, like most dreaming people do, but at the very least, I tried to not ignore what's happening outside, and it manifests. I read about why kind of the Soviet experiment failed. I read about capitalism. Then I moved to the United States. At first, it was very nice. Then I understood. Then I also saw the excesses and cruelties and then humanity of capitalism. So I started reading a lot about capitalism, about the social problems that were in the United States. Which so I thought when I moved to the United States, I thought it would be a much better society than Russia, and it was. It is actually, but I was faced with some other things that really shocked me. So I studied basically. I studied the human condition. I was always very interested. I read about Milgram experiments, which is connected to the question about the Nazis. How come people are so, how come people can be so cruel and callous and inhumane under an order from authority? But of course, I would not be able to state things like any relationship to authority is unhealthy relationship. You're either in submission or in rebellion to it, unless you're completely independent from it. I would not be able to state such things. I was not independent myself, of course. I was also a slave of my mind. And my relationship was mostly rebellious, at least in my mind. I was scared to do anything about it, but in my mind, I was sort of so. I tried to maintain an independent mind, which of course was not truly independent, but at least on the level of thought and the level of intellect, I was trying to understand things, the things that are happening around me. So I rejected religions, of course. I was an atheist. So all of that does not, like, when you start searching for truth, and the truth can be found in many, many things. Of course, the ultimate truth is also found in yourself, but even not closing your eyes to everything that is happening around you. When you start searching for truth, your life does not get easier. Your life gets more difficult because, as Osho said, the full truth hurts very much. So my life was quite difficult, emotionally speaking. Then, of course, I was also very naive about the relationship between men and women, and it was like very difficult for me to accept that women are not like some sort of much better gender, but they also cheat and they can be extraordinarily cruel. And it was just, it was when that happened to me, I was in a very I was in a very, very long depression afterwards. So when you actually don't close your eyes either towards yourself or to what's going on around you, it can be quite challenging life. So of course I was not as insightful. Like some things I learned before enlightenment, yes. I mean, like for example, as a lot of men, I also went through the stage of becoming more successful with women, like the pickup stuff and things like that. And after many years of struggles, I kind of abandoned it when I learned that the best way to connect to another human is being open, being honest and open, and not playing any tricks, but then take active interest in another human, a real interest. And so I kind of learned to like women, like things like that. So some of those things happened before enlightenment, yes. But most of this insight, I would say, happened afterwards. Like I would say, 80% of it. What is true is that I was always kind of smart. So I always had high IQ. I learned to read when I was very young. I was a geek. I loved to read. I studied physics and went to IT and things like that. So that kind of helps me to put two and two together and use language in a kind of a more precise way and put my insights into an understandable form. But as it comes to my happiness, this is a no consequence. If I did not know language very well, if I wasn't well read, I would be equally happy in enlightenment. That's absolutely not a consequence. It helps with teaching somewhat. So no, I was not always like that. My insights come mostly from unraveling of my own psyche. Someone with another name that I cannot pronounce asks, what exactly is self-realization in context of other maps of the path e.g., the four-path model, what would be the skillful way of developing insight after awakening and before self-realization? I don't really like and understand the four-path model. I think that it unduly focuses on technicalities such as cessations and stuff like that. Maybe I should give it another read. Like basically, self-realization proper is not just finding consciousness, which is some sort of a witness uh, uh, that is kind of outside of you, or the truest self that is outside of you, the higher self that is outside of you. Like in self-realization, consciousness is no longer a construct at all, and not a construct of the mind. So self-realization is basically when you jump into the infinitude of experience. So when everything around you becomes you. So it was described in many poetic terms, like when the drop falls into the ocean. So I think it was Rumi who was self-realized for most of its life. At least that's a story that Osho told. I don't remember. Uh, yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's correct, right? But the story that Osho told is that I think that it was Rumi who was self-realized for most of his life and only got enlightened shortly before death. And so he like changed one of his verses or something, like that. The self-realization is when the drop falls into the ocean and you cannot find the drop anymore. And enlightenment is when the ocean falls back into the drop and you cannot find the ocean anymore. And so self-realization is an ongoing, abiding experience where you where you realize yourself as consciousness, and you realize that every experience that you have ever had and that you will ever have is you. And so your vision becomes you, your hearing becomes you, all of your sensations. So instead of like someone who's having a sensations, which is an illusion, which is what the ego thinks, you literally become the sensations. And so it's not the end of the path, but that's Sat Chit Ananda. So there's extraordinary bliss there, a lot of happiness, of course, a lot of bliss, a lot of joy, and so I don't know exactly how it maps to the four-path model. The deeper stages of enlightenment have to do with the heart work, because this acceptance of that every experience is you also gives incredible courage to explore deeper and deeper parts of suffering, because suffering still happens after self-realization. It's a mistake, it's a delusion to think that it doesn't. And so I'm not sure kind of how the four-path model, like to me, I think so. I spoke to some of the people who claim that they're the fourth path. So to me, it's obvious that they're self-realized. That's all I can tell about them, right? They're not enlightened for sure, but they're self-realized. This is quite obvious to me. So to me, the majority of the path is actually from self-realization to enlightenment, but self-realization is an incredibly important milestone. It's an incredibly important milestone. And another way to describe it is that self-realization is an abiding disidentification from the ego. So when there is no identification with the ego anymore, so the identity moves to consciousness. The ego is still there. So people would say, I'm still human. I still suffer. I experience feelings, and of course, I am still human too. And I'm just not don't think that I'm. But also, they would say I'm consciousness, and things like that. So when that's what Adya describes as abiding awareness. So when you don't forget, when you never forget that the ego is not you. So some people who are in the beginning of this process, would say that you never forget that the body is not you, or you never forget that the human is not you. This is actually deep confusion, right? This is a language of escapism, because the ego is not the body, and the ego is not the human. Uh, but uh, but basically, when you never forget that the ego, what you observe in your mind, and the mental processes, and the suffering that comes up with it, is not you. So that's abiding self-realization. That's Satchitananda. Uh, there is actually no bliss in complete enlightenment. So this is a blissful state, because uh, bliss is simply the side effects of letting go of suffering. So to me, basically, most claimants of the fourth path are self-realized, but not enlightened. So you have another question of what would be a skillful way of developing insight after awakening and before self-realization. So uh, that's a great question. So you correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that, at least that's how I use it in my language, that you say that after awakening and before self-realization, you're talking about an awakened state where there is a presence of consciousness, or like there's a presence of witness. Maybe there's some witnessing, but it feels like a higher self, or like some witness, but you feel that you identify with the ego for the most part. Or maybe even a more kind of modest situation where you had an insight, you had a satori, you had a temporary experience, satori, kensho, where you had an insight on psychedelics or meditation that the ego doesn't exist, but you came back as the ego, and maybe you don't even feel any presence. So some people feel presence. You see, they still identify as the egos, but they feel presence. The identity did not jump into consciousness; they just feel presence. So both of those, technically speaking, you could say. I think that stream entry is when you feel presence. I'm not sure, and I don't think that's very important. But what are the practices after this, but before self-realization? So this should have given you some courage, right? And this should have given you some elimination of some doubt. Like usually after the awakening experience, there is no doubt that there are more to reality. At least let's put it this way: the doubt would still arise on the path, confusion would still arise on the path, but there is no doubt that there is a path. You see, and like when you're completely dreaming, like, okay, that's all there is, that's life. No, there's nothing more to life. So at least that has been seen through. uh, so spiritual practice, of course, meditation, and then there are some, even if you identify with the ego, right? I mean, if you identify with the ego, practice deeper honesty, the development of intimacy with other people, uh, being willing to look at your emotional experience, even if you identify with the ego. Accepting an emotional experience is still the most fundamental practice. It is the practice that people do with their psychologists, actually. It is the practice that people do. Like there's a practice of radical honesty, for example, would move deeply, not only awaken people, but even people who are dreaming. So learning to stay and with your emotional experience is beneficial, even if you identify with the ego. There's absolutely no question. Uh, so the same spiritual practices, strictly speaking, work before and after self-realization. So it's, like Gautama said, my teaching is good at the beginning, is good in the middle, is good in the end. So my teaching is actually very simple, but it can be described in the same way. So it's the same process. So the process of spiritual um, transformation is the process of reversal of the habitual impulse to look away at things in consciousness and in life. So one master was asked a question, and I really loved his answer, because I would have given the same answer if I had some thought about it. I would have given the same answer. So he was asked the question of, can you describe the most important thing on the spiritual path? And he gave it some thought. He thought about it, and then he said, attention. You see? So attention, giving attention to things that you have previously rejected attention to. And this applies to things in life, just like I described, as giving attention to the plight of misery of humanity. And this applies to things in your internal experience, which is a little bit more difficult to give attention to. But if you had an awakening experience, there's definitely some loosening of resistance, and you're in a better position to do that than most people. Even if it was a satori, if there's a witness, you're in a much better position to do that than most people. So giving attention to things that you were previously not giving attention to before, and willingness to look at things that you weren't willing to look at before. So and most importantly, it applies to your inner experience, to your internal experience. Okay, I hope that answers this question. And again, I mean, if it doesn't, then you can schedule. Oh, by the way, yeah, let's do this. So thank you everyone for watching. I would like to also ask you to please like, subscribe, and share. Please, it helps us grow the YouTube community very much. I would like to ask you, my dear listeners, to support our work. I have a Patreon account. It's only like $140 a month. It's certainly not enough to cover my living expenses. If you wish to support our work, please follow this link. You can support me on Patreon. You can support me on PayPal. You can set up one-time or monthly donations there. I'm doing some one-on-one sessions too. I will also post the link here. If you're financially struggling, there are options for free sessions and $25 sessions. But if you're not financially struggling, then there's a wide range of payments that then you should select the one that is most appropriate. So between that and some satsangs, there's something that kind of some part of my living expenses are covered, but I'm still, as I have been for the last 5 years, I'm still mostly living off my savings. So if you can contribute to the growing organization, that would be great. Then you please also join our community if you wish. We have a lively Discord community. This is the link to it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there will also be a retreat in the United States in September, and possibly in August in Europe. So if any of the questions, any of the answers that I give, you'd like to discuss them further, feel free to schedule a one-on-one session with me or come to Discord. Let's see. So another question. Oh, by the way, again, and I encourage you to join our satsangs, our video satsangs in person. That works better. Another name. I cannot pronounce a single name today. Okay. Okay. Why do we sometimes freeze when we feel fear? Is there any difference between freezing as a reaction to physical threat and being in a paralyzed state from frightening through thoughts and feelings? Okay. So that's a good question. So the fear that we feel in the dream state is actually fundamentally the same fear that is natural fear. So fear is a reaction to danger, and an adequate reaction to danger in the natural world is either fight or flight. Freeze is a sort of a very self-defeating reaction to danger. It's when you think that fighting or flighting does not make any sense. So if you like look at some videos from let's say jaguar like taking its time before it eats a baby antelope or something, right? And maybe she tries to escape a couple of times, but she knows that it can. So it just freezes and sort of awaits its fate. But uh, but mostly, it's either fight or flight. And in the natural state, this is completely normal reactions. They are automatic. The body knows what it's doing. The nature is very, very wise. So fundamentally, the fear of danger is of the same nature in the dream state. But what happens to it is because we are suppressing this reaction. We're suppressing fear, we're suppressing anger, we're suppressing a lot of reactions as an expectation from adults, right? When we're raised, when we're conditioned, then we kind of accumulated so much of it that it becomes dysregulated. And when it becomes so dysregulated that it literally kind of saturates our experience, it also kind of acquires its own qualities, so to say. So to me, the kind of natural fear that I would feel if someone threatened me or my body feels very, very differently than egoic fear. So egoic fear felt very, very differently. It was the same fear, but it was a kind of a fear that was suppressed, accumulated in my system, and it was a dysregulated fear. So when we talk about people who living in fear in the dream state, like I was living in fear in the dream state, most of them are not aware of it. It's not the fear that they feel. When they start feeling it during the process of spiritual transformation, it feels very intense, and there's a lot of it. And so so we are talking here mostly about this kind of fear. Just wanted to make this clarification. Because in the natural state of things, you kind of the reaction is automatically chosen. It's kind of chosen for you. The body chooses it for you, and it does it in a rational way, depending on the situation. But those fear, this egoic fear, there's usually so much of it that it kind of it overwhelms you. In a way, it's a dysregulated fear, it's a dysregulated reaction, and it can be triggered by things that are absolutely not dangerous to you. And the same can be said about anger. So anger and fear are the most like fundamental, right, reaction to danger. And so generally speaking, people choose unconsciously one of the ways of coping with it, because there's so much of it, right? It's not just a natural reaction to something that happened, but it comes up all the time. It can come up at work. It can come up when absolutely nothing happens to you. It can come up in meditation. It can come up in relationships to other people. And so with some sort of a coping reaction is chosen. There's not much to choose from. So it's either, freeze, flight, run away. So freeze, run away, fight. There's not a lot of them, and so you kind of choose your reaction habitually, and it happens automatically. And so you know how you usually respond to fear, and in the spiritual practice and meditation, you will choose to overcome. Oh, so you will learn to overcome this automatic coping reaction of yours and surrender to the fear deeper, right? So you will still experience it, of course. If your reaction is flight, then you can start walking or pacing. If it's freeze, then you will find yourself kind of in the frozen state from time to time, but sooner or later you will see through it, and you will invite the fear and accept the fear. Because in the spiritual transformation, during the spiritual transformation, we're not dealing with fear of anything actual that is happening to you. We are dealing with fear, with the suppressed fear of the past. We're dealing with the fear of the spiritual transformation itself. We're dealing with the fear of the unconscious. We're dealing with the fear of experience. We're dealing with the fear of energetic experience, of Kundalini experience. We're dealing with the fear of seeing anger, of seeing hatred. of seeing our resentment, of seeing our psyche. We're dealing with the fear of love. We're dealing with the fear of bliss. We're dealing with the fear of the past. They can also, on the level of the mind, be manifested as the fear of the future. But both are ultimately imaginary and exist only in the mind. So, uh, so this fear is safe for us to experience, and moreover, it hides something. Right behind this fear, there's some experience which you were afraid of. So I once said that fear, fundamentally, what fear is fear is anticipation of pain. And in nature, it's natural, right? So if you're in a dangerous situation, you also anticipate pain, anticipate some damage. So it's natural fear. Or like you falling from some height, it's natural fear. But on the spiritual transformation, you anticipating emotional pain, you anticipating energetic pain, you anticipating the pain that you have suppressed before and was in denial of, and now you're processing it. It rises from your unconscious. That's what you're anticipating. That's why it's scary. You see, when you experience fear in meditation or in psychedelic trips, and so of course it's difficult to remember oftentimes when there's a lot of fear. You can make notes, maybe. I did. Many people make notes. So, but by allowing this fear, you be beyond this fear, behind this fear, there's an experience that you were actually afraid of. And when this experience comes after the fear, when it comes, you're already not afraid of it. So even though the experience might be unpleasant, but there's usually, when the experience actually comes, there's already no fear. That's why I said, once you can only afraid of what hasn't happened yet. Once it happens, it begins to happen. There's no more fear. So the experience itself can be still unpleasant, and once you go through it, there will be a relief. There will be possibly some insight and a deeper relaxation. So whenever fear comes on the spiritual journey, uh, celebrate it. It means, oh, this is so great. That means that I'm going to be shown something soon about myself or about others, so like about reality, basically. We can put it this way. So that's a very beautiful marker when you experience fear. And on the mental state, it can also, on the mental level, it can manifest as confusion. So a lot of people experience fear and confusion, some sort of weirdness, eeriness, anxiety, and the mind is confused. Like, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on? So remind yourself, nothing really bad is going on. It's just fear. It's confusion. We're sinking deeper into experience. Okay. Thomas says, in enlightenment, does one still have sexual fantasies? Would promiscuity be appealing? Animals fuck all the time, and let people tend to be celibate and monogamous, as far as I can see. I can tell you that my sexual fantasies have certainly dissipated to pretty much zero. Most of the sexual fantasies come from suppressed sexual energy, which is one case. So you could be deeply spiritually suppressed and you have a lot of fantasies. Another case is, which I think would apply to you more because I know you, would be that the sexual fantasies are a coping mechanism, an addiction, an attempt to escape the suffering through the momentary pleasure of sex that never works in the long term. Or there also could be very deeply intertwined, interconnected with love, because we are living in a society where sex is confused with intimacy, sex is confused with love, and it's a highly sexualized society. Even love and intimacy are spoken about mostly as a romantic relationship between two people, and romantic relationship is sexual relationship, for most people, most of all. So people very rarely, even, for example, speak about love and intimacy between friends. I'm not even talking about between strangers, but just between friends. So love and intimacy is very deeply interconnected with sex, and it can be observed in the psyche of some people. I certainly have observed it in my own psyche. that the feeling of greater intimacy, the feeling of greater love can also have some sexual connotations. And people, for example, I had one time a female student told me that she's very turned on by being it's not like that she wasn't it wasn't a sexual attraction, actually. It was a feeling of intimacy, a feeling of love, a feeling of being understood, of being accepted, confused, intertwined with sexual connotation in her psyche. And so something similar happens to actually a lot of people. Uh, and so sexual fantasies in enlightenment disappear steadily for those reasons, right? So enlightenment is infinite intimacy with yourself. It's intimacy with other people. So this confusion no longer arises. Whatever sexual suppression was there is also worked through. Sex is not used to as a mean of escape. And also a lot of sexual energy, what sex is also portrayed as in our culture, a lot of sexual energy is an energy of either domination or submission. So sex is very much intertwined with domination and submission in the egoic psyche. And as those things also go away, so the related sexual fantasies also go away. So that's why, for some people, for responsible people, BDSM can be very spiritually significant practice, and that's why people have all sorts of kinks. Women have fantasies of rape. Men who are very dominant in their daily lives can have very strong kinks and can have a lot of sexual gratification from being submissive. So sex is also related to that part of the psyche. And so yes, I mean, ultimately they go away, which does not mean that you become completely asexual. This is also not true. It's just like, when it's time to have sex, you have sex. It's not like you fantasize about it all the time. Question: what is value of nicotine? Is it basically like coffee? No, it's much worse. I mean, nicotine is like the worst, the most stupid. Nicotine is the most stupid drug that you could ever use. It gives you so when you just begin smoking or consuming nicotine, it gives you some sort of relaxation. The reason it's attractive for a suffering psyche is because it gives a momentary feeling of relaxation. It kind of soothes a little bit. I think that it has something to do with, like, it plays some trick with concentration too, or something. I don't remember. But most importantly, like when you're a teenager and you have your first cigarette, you're like, oh, and you're like, oh, this is an interesting kind of state. You get high a little, but as you continue, if you continue to smoke, it very, very quickly, it's like one of the most probably the drug with the fastest what's it called, like I forgot the term that I wanted to use, but basically it very, very quickly stops giving you that high. It just exhausts itself, like, pretty much in a few days, and then you smoke just to feel normal again. So then the dynamic with nicotine becomes, if the body doesn't get nicotine, then the body doesn't like it, and you just need to smoke to get to the baseline. So it exhausts itself. It exhausts its benefits, so to speak, like extraordinarily quickly, and then you just use it to get back to the baseline. The same can be said about any drug, actually. Some people do the same thing with coffee. Like, for example, my relationship with coffee was that I could drink a latte before going to bed, and it wouldn't. So I kind of like the taste. You can say I was addicted. I don't know, but I never felt any like rush. So it's not like I would drink coffee and I would feel woof, it was just pretty much just to drink for me. Now I don't drink coffee. Uh, so, but most people don't have this relationship with coffee. It takes quite a lot of time to like get to that line, with certainly not to several days. It takes some time to get to that place with almost any drug, where you basically just consume it to get back to the baseline. That instead of like a drug giving you something good, you just use the drug to avoid feeling bad. So you just use the drug to feel normal again. But it happens with all drugs, because drugs fundamentally are just attempts to escape. But I don't think that there is any drug for which it happens so quickly as with nicotine. So nicotine is the most useless drug from this perspective, and one of the most difficult to stop. It's also extremely addictive. So my advice would be never touch nicotine. It's one of the stupidest thing you can do. Okay, Maxime says, "Hi mate, I'm not able to join via Discord. That's not. It's not via Discord. Oh, I can't see you on Discord. It's not. It's not broadcasted on Discord. It's broadcasted on YouTube, Facebook, and to join, you use the link, the StreamYard link, which is posted to the comment section, and was also posted in the announcements channel of the Discord server." Okay, Noodle says, "Seeing the distance they would be away, maybe what they see is the moment we're evolving from reptiles." I'm not sure I understand the context of this. Rick, also another name I cannot read, says, "I have my first 10-day Vipassana retreat next week. Any tips or advice? What are your thoughts on Vipassana spiritual practice?" Vipassana is a wonderful meditation technique. So they teach you body scan. They teach you concentration. Uh, my advice would be, follow the instructions of the teacher. Uh, don't be afraid to go into emotional experience as well, right? So if they say, scan body sensations, remember that emotions are also body sensations, so you don't need to like limit it to only specific body parts. Also, like, by the way, I'm not like super familiar with Vipassana. I read a book on it. I think Goenka's book. I think I read his book, which is like 30 or 40 pages or something like that. After self-realization, it of course made complete sense to me. Uh, One piece of advice that I often give: don't let your teacher make you believe that the position of meditation is very important, or you should not move at all in meditation. I think that actually in the book that I read, they specifically gave the same advice that I give, which was good. That if you feel like you want to change position in meditation, if your body doesn't like it, like, your body gets sore or something like this, do change position. Just do it slowly, meditatively, consciously. But it's not about torturing the body. It's not about complete stillness of the body. Your body may even jerk in meditative experiences, or as some emotion comes up, or you begin to cry. Obviously, the body will also not be completely still. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think Vipassana is a wonderful technique. I guess the the top mistake that I see people doing long meditations is that they think that they need to be completely still, and that they should not ever change position in meditation. I actually spoke to a monk one day who lost his toes as a result of continued sitting meditation. Right? I wish someone had told him at the time that he doesn't have to sit still in a position that is uncomfortable for his body. And I mean, the usual advice: be ready to experience anything. Open yourself up to any experience. Drop any expectation of any experience. And don't try to create any experience. Don't try to cling to it or reject any experience. And of course, you will notice those processes in the psyche, but go with this intent. Go with the intent to experience anything and open yourself up to anything. That's the most important intent that you can have. Open yourself up, basically. Uh, don't expect anything. Be ready to jump into the unknown. Be ready to experience anything. Okay. Écoute ton être. Listen to your being. I know French a little. Hello, dear Artem. Hi. Do you say anything else? Yes. I can't seem to be able to join Discord live. Is that Maxime? Okay, so that Maxime already covered it, but it's not broadcasted on Discord. Anyone else? I feel like slowing down is the way forward. The slower I go, the deeper I seem to be able to see things from the big picture. Certainly, absolutely. You can put it this way. Yes, enlightenment is slowing down the mind. It just takes a very long time. In one of my answers I wrote, as the mind slowly grinds to a halt. I mean, this slowly grinds to a halt takes usually many years. But yes, and time starts to be experienced subjectively as much slower process, and lots of very interesting phenomenological things happen. But yeah, yes, certainly, yes. And sometimes slowing down your activity, slowing down your body, literally, helps you slow down the mind, because you slow down and you notice, ooh, so I slowed down, but the mind is racing, it doesn't like it, and it gets you an opportunity to explore the objections in the mind, the yearnings, the kind of, we need to do something, we need to perform, like faster, faster, faster. And as you do that, the mind also slows down. So yes, you can actually practice slowing down the mind by slowing down yourself. It's just that the side effect of this practice is that as you slow down yourself, you will see more of objection of the mind temporarily. So don't think you're doing anything wrong, right? So if you just sit down and for an hour just look outside into some beautiful scenery, you will see the mind become more active temporarily, because the mind doesn't like it. The mind thinks it's in control of you. So if the mind is restless and it wants you to do things that, once you stop doing it, the mind is like, well, what's going on here? Let me throw a tantrum. so it can be very valuable to slow yourself down and see the mind's reaction to that. And of course, if there's no reaction, but just enjoyment and deeper sinking into the experience, it's even better. Okay. Chitra says, hi, Artem. Hi. Some people think that the world won't disappear when the self is realized. Okay. Others say that the world still disappear when the self is realized. What do you think? You are talking about a temporary experience of realizing the self. So in the temporary experience of realizing the self, the world, of course, does disappear. But if we're talking about the state of abiding realization, then the embodiment of enlightenment happens here. Embodiment happens on earth. Embodiment happens in your body. Right, so you can say there is no world all day long, but you still operate in the world. So the realization, the realization itself, you can say yes. Like during the realization, when you see that there is no self, the world can disappear entirely, and there could be many stages actually of this disappearance. So one is you see nothing but energy, and like everything is energy, and you just see deep oneness. But then there's also, you can see absolute nothingness. And in the sufficiently deeply meditative states, the states of Nirodha Samapati, I think it's called, right, is when there's absolutely no experience at all. So it's like death, or like very deep sleep that is deeper than sleep. So you can say that during the stages of realization in a temporary experience, the world does disappear. But what it really is, from the psychological perspective, is that you're being told that the final destination is death, and the process of the experience of seeing yourself as nothing but energy is love. And love and death are two sides of the same coin. They are intimately interconnected. And so this realization can happen at the stages of insights, as they call them sometimes. It can happen in meditation. It can happen in other uh, practices over and over again. But it's also this realization that all existence is love, and it's also fundamentally empty because of death. Those two facets of realization is also what allows the later embodiment work of uncovering and exploring our argument with it. What the ego is actually, it's an argument with it, an argument with the fact that all existence is love, and the argument with the fact is that our existence is finite, and death is the final destination. And so this argument manifests as difficult energies, as difficult emotions, and things like that. That's the embodiment. So you still operate in the world, and the more embodied you are, the more loving you are, the more calm you are, the more your heart is open to other people, the more your heart is open to yourself. So it starts with opening your heart to yourself, deeper and deeper and deeper. And because we're all fundamentally the same people, your heart opens up to everyone. So yes, uh, the disappearance of the world cannot be an abiding state, because if the world does not exist for you in the abiding state, uh, but you don't behave like it doesn't, you still behave as it is, but you say that it isn't, then what's really going on in your psyche is that you kind of attached, focused, transfixed by love or death, and is in denial, are in denial of the actual world in which you have to live. So this deep love and deep peace. So deep love for everything that comes from the realization that existence is love, and deep peace that comes from the realization that it's empty. They need to saturate on the spiritual path all of your experiences in the world. Uh, that's the abiding realization. Okay, let's see. Écoute ton être continues. At this point, I'm aware of being aware of being nothing and everything. This awareness seems to go beyond the being of no or no being. Aware of life and death, it seems to be eternal, but in time. To me, the truth I feel in my heart's To me, it's the truth I feel in my heart so far. Please express your thoughts. This is Maxime. I don't have any thoughts. This is beautifully stated. This is great. This is wonderful. Good for you. Okay, Holmes says, this could be related to crying. My heart made weird squeaking noises for a couple of seconds after I walked in forest. I felt burn in palms and face that I realized might need to rest for a while. I had shaking and all the same stuff. I called my mom to pick me up because I couldn't even walk 10 meters without feeling uncomfortable. I kind of recovered in 24 hours, but just fucking crazy. I can literally hear my heart squeaking. It made fast clicking noises. Other times I had the same shaking. Shaking always starts after noises from the heart. When this thing happened the first time on shrooms, blood rushed to my extremes, to my core. My arms were blue, but it seems to get easier. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, there could be all sorts of physical effects. It's a very physical transformation. It's an extremely physical transformation. So you can say that it's the mind, the brain rewiring itself into its natural state. But so the way that I explain to people, but the brain is a huge interconnected, vast network of neurons that cover every inch of your body. So in my experience, every single inch of my body was affected by it. So I had kundalini everywhere, like absolutely everywhere. Of course, there were some parts when they were more intense, but not a single. So the tips of my fingers, even my teeth, everything on my face, like every single part of my body was somehow touched by this process. And of course, things like heart, the gut, the head, the gut, the head are oftentimes where people have a lot of experience, and the extremities too. They can jerk. So it is not dangerous. I, uh, I don't know. Like I would be interested if you only heard the clicking, or if you also felt the clicking. So if it's like, is it something physical that happened in your heart, which you actually heard through your inner ear, or you just heard the sound of clicking? Because you see, what also happens oftentimes is some sort of synesthesia. I'm not trying to say that your heart was not behaving strangely, especially if, but uh, I saw myself very strange things. During the process of transformation on psychedelic trips and in meditation, and like for example, I had one student that took some shrooms, and he was describing, as his stomach was uh, I think bloating or something like that, and he went to a doctor and they said no, everything is fine. So there could be a lot of strange tricks in perception that can actually distort the perception of your body and your organs. I'm not trying to say it didn't happen, absolutely. So that's why I'd be interested if the click was only audible, or you also felt something in your heart, and you heard the sound of it through your inner ear. But even if it's the latter, it's I'm almost entirely sure that it's completely not dangerous, and one of those very strange side effects that come with it. If you're concerned, though, you can check your heart with the doctor. I think that they're going to tell you that it's going to be fine. Привет. I also don't know how to pronounce this name. So Maxim says that the flight and fight are actually rooted in human DNA, as well as any animal. So any mammal would have the same. It's not a lot of choice, we're not responsible for it. I did a presentation on the subject, but you can tell your body it's safe and danger isn't there. Body is not rational. Well, the body is rational. The ego is not rational. So when we're talking about the fear that is coming up in situations where nothing threatens your body, it's your ego and all of the rejected fear that is telling you that you're not safe. Anti Dusty says deep state for conducting psychological warfare on your planet. All psychological. Oh, are you talking about the aliens or something? Actually, all psychological warfare is happening in your mind. As some form of autism an evolutionary reaction to the ego. From my perspective, autism is ego. So autism is a state of withdrawal, right? So you see, babies are not stupid, actually. Like we form the ego as a reaction to the outer world. So nature is not stupid. So babies actually know that there's something wrong with adults. I mean, they cannot articulate it, but they're afraid of them. And babies know when they are withdrawn, when they rejected love. Babies know when they're angered at for no reason, because if a baby did not attack you or threaten you, and they receive anger for them, that makes it fearful. It's not a natural thing to happen. And so to me, autism is a deep withdrawal inwards from the dangerous and hateful society, from a dangerous and hateful world. And yes, we can talk about genetic predisposition to autism, but it would be very difficult for me to imagine a child, even with some predisposition to autism, if he's brought up in a truly loving family and not exposed to a culture and society and other hateful adults and the dangers of the human world, would develop autism. It's very difficult for me to imagine that. Uh, okay, let's see. Okay, I'm almost done with comments. Thank you for addressing my questions so thoroughly, my friend. Perhaps we will meet on video at some point. Much love. Yeah, I would love to. Patrick says, "What is it when the thought, what is enlightenment, can finish? It's like it continues. It gets sucked into the nothing." So, so the thoughts about enlightenment are very normal. The mind loves to think about enlightenment. It loves to look at it from this perspective or the other. So the thoughts about enlightenment are manifestation that the process continues, that the ultimate reality has not yet been reached, that there's still some ego, that there's still some need to explain the reality. There's some, so all the philosophical thoughts about the nature of reality are actually a manifestation that the work has not been done, right? So it does not mean, so don't let it kind of scare you into like, okay, I must. You don't have to. Like most people that are awakened or enlightened just lead their life in a much better state of consciousness until death, and they some continuously think about enlightenment almost every day. So one person who actually one person who is self-realized but not enlightened told me that, once you're enlightened, you always think about enlightenment. So that's actually not true. I pretty much never think about enlightenment. It's but I used to for a long time, for many years. So as I was going deeper and deeper, excavating and bringing up my suffering to the level of consciousness, those thoughts also go away. So the interesting thing about the mind is that it thinks about what is still not completely realized, what is still not completely understood. It's like when you're only learning to do something, right? You think about it. But when you actually understand it completely and it becomes your second nature, you don't think about how to ride a bicycle. You don't think about how to walk. You probably never think about how to drive your car. But when you were just learning to drive, you were actually thinking about, oh, where's this, this shift, or where's this bell? There were actually some processes in the mind. So something similar happens with enlightenment. So when the mind receives an insight, and it applies both to this grandiose, big philosophical insight, there is no ego, there is no self. When the mind just receives the insight, it wants to chew on it for a while. It applies to the psychological insight as your mental landscape continues to destruct about what reality is, what our society, the reality of our society, how you were before, the pain that drives people. When you start seeing yourself better, you start seeing other people better, the insights that you receive during this process, the mind also likes to think about it. But once it is truly understood and accepted, there's nothing more to think. I mean, you can think about what you're doing, right? But you don't think about how you are, or you don't think about reality, you don't think about the nature of reality. So for as long as there's still this thought that's an indication that the process continues, there is nothing wrong with that. As usual, let the mind do its thing. Don't try to stop it. If it brings confusion or if it brings some other sensation in the body, that's the opportunity to explore it. But it's natural. Don't think there's anything wrong with it. That was about the alien existence. Oh, I see. Yeah, possibly. I don't know. Maxim says it's not easy to let go of the temporary. What appears and disappears is not real. Romana, wonderful statement. Yes. What appears and disappears is not real from one perspective. Right. From another perspective, you still live in what appears and disappears. Right. So from my perspective, the body is real. The body cannot be not real. So you'll tell me that the body is not real when you stop eating and pooping. But the ego is not real. So the ego appears and disappears, and it can disappear entirely. Chita, it was a yes or no questions, but your long answer was sort of fascinating. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, Hum says, I also felt the clicking, but the squeaking. I also felt the clicking, but the squeaking I couldn't feel, but probably because I was walking at the time. Maybe, yeah. But still, there could still be some auditory component of it that is from the mind. I'm not saying it was, but there could still be. So it's a very weird things when those things happen. Very strange things could happen. Samuel says, going from neither being nor non-being to being the body is the same as realizing that I can't experience my death. Pretty much, yes, 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 pretty much. There is no way for you to experience death. You can only experience life. Like anything, uh, like even if if there is a thought, I'm dying, or this is my last moment, you're still alive. You cannot experience death. So yes, it makes complete sense that I'm just the body, but I have hard time reconciling this new perspective with the former position on the dependent origination of phenomena. Any comments? Well, I mean, well, first of all, everything egoic is dependently originated. So all karma uh, uh, in the mind is a result of conditioning, a result of something happening to you in the past, right? That's also why people experience past lives. So past lives aren't strictly speaking about past lives; that they're about culture, but as experientially, it is still dealing with the past, and everything that you experienced in past life experiences is something that is needs to be resolved on the level of the psyche. So you could say that all the psyche is constructed this way, dependently originated. Now you could apply the same argument to the body, right? Because you could say that, like, imagine as you just form, right? In the beginning, there was nothingness, just absolute emptiness, complete emptiness. You can even say there was no consciousness, because consciousness without any contents of consciousness is not an experience. Experience is change. Every experience is change. Changeless is not an experience. It's just eternity. It's nothingness. There would be nothing. No one would be able to say there is consciousness, because for that there would need to be it's like even consciousness being aware of consciousness, being aware of never being. No, not even that, because being aware is an experience. So so uh, so then this nothingness, this like absolute nothingness, right? So and you are a little child, not a child even, zygote, well, I mean, not even a fetus, in your mother's womb. So you start forming, right? And in this consciousness, there begin to form some experience, right? So your body starts forming, you growing, always in change from the first moment of your life to the last moment of your life, always in change. Your body grew from this into that, and then it's going to decay, all in consciousness, always changing, right? So you could say that all of it, that the whole creation of your body, and all of the experience that associated with your body in consciousness is also dependently originated, and it will also, and just like it was formed, it would be decomposed, right? So there will be, as you die, there will be a moment when all bodily senses will go away completely, right? And the body will also, on the physical level, other people will be able to observe it. The body will decompose, and the body will be no more. So you can say that all of this is dependently originated, uh, as the body begins to form, as you grow, and as you die. But this is not something that you can actually experience while you're alive. You, for as long as you're alive, for as long as there's something like, so any master, any enlightened master, for as long as they move and speak, I mean, they still experience vision, they still experience the bodily senses, yes, in a much more pristine, beautiful, clear way, with absolutely no resistance to them, in the pristine, beautiful light of awareness, right? With no egoic manifestation, no thought, no unnecessary thought, no suffering, relaxed body, beautiful experience. But still, it is still, you cannot say that, um, uh, kind of, you cannot get rid of this dependent origination as it comes to your body before you die. So that's why ultimately I'm just the body. Yes, there is awareness. Everything is aware. Every living being is aware, and all the dreaming people are aware. It's not something that they don't know, but what they think that they're their egos. That's what they don't know. So if you can say that all phenomena are dependently originated, but you will not be able to see that the phenomenological experience of your body is dependently originated until you actually die. Because uh, if any enlightened masters claim that, then they would not be able. So just like I'm not able to experience egoic phenomena, right? So I'm not experiencing anger, I'm not experiencing any suffering from the ego, right? Whatever is really seen through disappears. So if they claim that they went through the dependent origination of the body and all the experience of the body, it means that they would not be able to tell the difference between a taste of an apple and a knife into their stomach. But of course they would be able to tell the difference. They still experience it. When the ego is truly seen through, when the ego is truly dissolved, you don't experience it anymore. So from that perspective, you could say that the path ends in the body. And Osho said, in Beyond Enlightenment, my spirit and my body is finally one. So you forget the full enlightenment is when you forget all the spiritual aspiration. All of this has been done, and you become extraordinary, ordinary again, the most ordinary part of existence. Just enjoying your existence as the most ordinary part of existence, which for me is to be human. And like for a squirrel is to be squirrel, but animals don't need enlightenment, only humans do. And animals live the whole life in the natural state. Artem, did you lose interest in many of your hobbies in this process? Did your life become less active? In some ways, yes, because it's not. Well, first of all, I didn't have any hobbies. I was like well, maybe a little sports, like some sports, but I was mostly like a workaholic, a geek kind of person. I mean, unless you like count my romantic endeavors as hobbies, but hobbies as some sort of occupation, where you try to get better consistently. Like some people go to like martial arts, dance for like 20 years. I've never had anything like that. Some sports, but not for too long. And did it become less active? Yes, but it's not a manifestation of the passivity of the enlightened state. It's more of the manifestation of the hyperactivity of the dream state. The dream state is hyperactive because we're in search for happiness. Always in search for happiness. It's a hyperactive state. That's why it is so tiring. That's why some people, like after self-realization, there's so much energy. After my self-realization, I slept like for 2 or 3 months, mostly like 6 hours a day. There's so much energy that is released. The energy that is used to maintain the egoic delusion, to maintain the illusion of the separate self. Uh, and so, from my perspective, my life did not become more passive. It became more balanced. So I do what I want to do. Right. My life is much slower than before, of course. Right. But I'm 47 years old, so I like to take walks. I don't like fast life. Even though I work, I teach quite a lot, but I like to take walks. It's not like super passive. It used to be super passive in like the first few years after self-realization. I could just sit on my sofa for months, just looking outside, completely immersed, just awash in bliss, and that was something different. Now there is no bliss. There's just peace, and it's more balanced, right? From my perspective, I lead a very balanced life of an individual, kind of how I wanted to live. If I was 20, I would probably live a different life. I would like I would love to have more adventures and stuff like that. But I've had a lot of adventures. I've been to a lot of countries. I moved countries. I'm very happy with my life the way it is now. So it will, don't be afraid. It will be exactly what you want it to be. Like if you want to live a more passive life than you are right now, it means that you're doing too much. And for some people who, like, for example, have been uh, uh, chronically depressed, or chronically beat down by the harshness of the ego as they begin to awaken, couldn't maybe even get a job or couldn't hold a job, as they begin to awaken, and shed their limitations, they will rediscover their creativity and the joy of life, and their life might become much more active, not passive. So it's still a journey of self discovery. So everything, you will not miss out on anything. Chitra says, okay, thanks for a fascinating answer. I don't agree with everything you said. I was chatting about ajata, which is permanent. Consciousness is permanent, or like you can say awareness that is beyond consciousness. Awareness of death is permanent. I don't think we disagree. I just think that you like to pretend that you understand things and I don't. So Hum says, I first thought the squeaking came from my backpack rubbing against my jacket. It was like, just the jacket. But then I felt existential doom and my palms and face and a sensation shaking. Sounds like a fun experience. Uh, is ADHD also ego? Yes. Or is it at least a dysregulated nervous system? I mean, ego is the dysregulated nervous system. Because I don't know where most of my ADHD reactions went. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, they went, they went away. Yes, ultimately, yes. This stream yard link isn't working. Okay, I have 4 more questions. Please don't send me any more. I'm about to finish. Dmitry Agafonov says, would you agree that emptiness practice is not very effective for working with doubt, and that doubt needs to be burnt by the fire of love, not just seeing through? The argument is that the emptiness practice relies on the seeker, and doubt is a manifestation of the seeker also. I don't know what you mean by emptiness practice. I don't think that emptiness can be practiced, actually. The only thing that I can think of, like if you practice detachment, that's wrong practice. You cannot practice detachment. Detachment is only possible through acceptance. Through acceptance, you can. Sometimes I put it this way: you can detach from thought. You can detach from ideas, concepts, and stuff like that into experience. Yes, but you cannot detach from experience. If you detach from experience, you're basically just bypassing. So when you practice emptiness, right, the emptiness of all experience, you practice, if you put it this way, so the emptiness of all experience, the emptiness of all experience is seen as a temporary nature of all experience. So let's say you're in meditation and then something comes up, like anger comes up, and you just stay with it, you give your attention, and then it goes over some peak, and then it dissipates, and you understand it was temporary. So all experience have temporary nature, but you cannot realize it by trying to detach from them. You need to observe them, and you need to actually be present with them, stay with them, not run away from them, in order to see that they actually uh, go away. Because if you try to detach from them, you're kind of pushing them away. So you can detach from thought. It may feel like you have detached from consciousness. Like when you detach from thought, you may feel like your new identity is consciousness, and so you're detached from all experience. But actually, if you're very observant, you will notice that this consciousness experiences things more profoundly, more intimately. than before, right? So it's not like you detached, you actually became closer to all of the experience, even though it feels like you detached into consciousness. The immediacy of your experience became more, not less. So that's the fire of love. That's what it burns. So it burns all of the suffering by accepting it, by becoming more intimate with it. So I have never heard the term emptiness practice, and I wonder if this is what you mean. Uh, there are also meditation on death, which is another thing. I don't think that's what you mean, but kind of that's just a practice where you're imagining yourself dying, and you're learning to accept all the emotional experience that come with it. So also kind of, I wouldn't call it a detachment practice. Uh, so I mean, about the seeker, you can say all practices rely on the seeker. I mean, so what? I mean, uh, like even when I wasn't seeking at all, right? So the majority of my experience actually in spiritual practice happened after I was not seeking at all. Not the majority of my experience in life, but the seeking completely ended and the suffering didn't. So it's I don't think that kind of the seeker identity is a very important thing to discuss. Actually, what's important is as the seeker seeks to see what you're trying to escape, because seeking is always trying to escape something. Uh, is always trying to find something permanent where you could find refuge from everything that is going on. Okay, so last thing, sexual desire makes me crazy. Yes. Nice. So Hum says, and I agree that it could be hallucination, but I'm usually aware that I experience hallucinations. Hallucinations usually end suddenly, and they have dream intuitive feel to them. Yeah. So you would know your experience much better than I. So if it's felt like it's really audible click, then it is. I don't know what in the heart can click this way. I'm not a physician. Okay, last question, the last one. It never goes over 2 hours. Abhinav, this last one question, please. Can you speak on toxic guilt? As I'm becoming more aware, I'm able to see I have made too many mistakes in the past. It's overwhelming to see my mistakes. So toxic guilt actually isn't guilt, it's shame. If it's really toxic, if those were truly your mistakes, and you know that they were your mistakes, uh, and the mistakes are things that you do out of ill will, right? Uh, that's not actually toxic guilt. That's just guilt. Toxic guilt is when you feel guilty because you don't do the things that you think you should do, but you don't actually have to do. So if you're like in an abusive relationship and you think that you have to walk around another on eggshells and succumb to their any demand, once you stop doing this, you might be experiencing guilt. That's not guilt. That's shame. If you're talking about mistakes when you actually mistreated others and you know that they were coming from anger or you know that they were coming from your own suffering, you will experience guilt. And you cannot do anything about it. Nothing at all. So you will have to stay with this guilt just like you can stay with just like you will need to stay with all the anger and resentment and yes, it is very, very difficult to see how we have been mistreating other people, just like it is very difficult to see how we have been mistreated ourselves. It's the same difficulty because the amount of conditioning, the amount of suffering is the amount of mistreatment. It's just a question of direction. Will you direct it to yourself? Will you direct it towards others? Usually there's both going on. There's just a kind of propensity to do more one or the other. So those who are kind of more victims and depressive, more mistreat themselves. They're the more aggressive, narcissistic, exploitative. They're more mistreat others. But both will come with guilt. And I'm sorry, my friend. There's nothing you can do about it. So just but rejoice in the fact that you're seeing it as a mistake. That's the most important win here. That's the silver lining here. Because you cannot stop making your mistakes until you realize that they're mistakes. And so that you know that this is a mistake, that's how growth happens. So there's a win here. You won't repeat it anymore. Yes, you need to process guilt around it. Yes, it comes with it. It comes with the territory, you see. But you realized, you have noticed that it's a mistake. And that's important, you know. And also, by the very same measure, it means that back then, when you made this mistake, you didn't know, right? Because you're only understanding it now. You only know it now. Means that back then you didn't know, which means it was not your fault. So you can forgive yourself because you didn't know. If you knew, you wouldn't have made this mistake, right? And so the guilt comes. It's natural, right? It's a process of self-forgiveness. It's a part of the process of self-forgiveness. So there is something good about what's going on. It's just very difficult to experience guilt. I know, but it's part of the process of self-forgiveness. Okay, Dimitri says, I agree with your definition of emptiness practice. It didn't mean detachment, but rather impermanence and oneness of the experience. For me, emptiness practice is insight practice. Okay, so let's, you're using vocabulary which I am probably not as well versed as, and so let's speak at some time on one-on-one. You will educate me on the vocabulary that you're using, and then I might be able to give you more a better advice. But I will need to explore your framework first. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. I've been trying to finish it for some time. Thank you. It's been 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It was a lot of fun. I'm somewhat disappointed that no one showed their face, but still, lots of good questions and comments. And so, please visit my website, join my Discord community, schedule a one-on-one session with me, like, share this video, submit a donation. All of this would be very, very much appreciated. Hope to see you guys on our retreats. And I will talk to you later in a couple of weeks. Best of luck to you on the spiritual path. Love you all. Bye.